why didn't you get away from her, you bitch? Cineboys to Cinemen, episode 58.
58, yep.
Back after a little while.
Yeah, it's been a long time. When we say next week, we don't mean that literally.
Yeah, could be any upcoming week.
Yeah. Like next week, but like from whenever you either like put it on or just not that.
That's true. We don't factor in. Maybe that's what we're trying to do, is that we're factoring in like the sort of way in which people might listen to our episodes.
Yeah. I think with the last one, people probably waited 3 weeks and then listened to it.
Yeah. This week, Alien Romulus.
Yep, Romulan Nimbazoid.
The 7th installment of the Alien franchise.
That's right, yeah.
With it being Alien. We'll probably have a little chat about that.
Yeah.
Conscious maybe to skirt around it more than delve into it, because I feel like that's something we've spoken about quite a lot.
Yeah.
But, I think it's necessary given the film. Also, I want to chat about the universe more broadly, and also legacy sequels.
Yes, definitely.
Or legacy films. I'm not sure if this is necessarily a sequel. It probably is more of a sequel to Ridley Scott's sort of more recent efforts to sort of mythologize the Alien universe.
And also, weirdly, a sequel to Alien as well. Though obviously, there's a very well-established sequel to Alien, which is, by title and in sort of the kind of public consciousness. But anyway, it exists in the Alien universe. I guess you can kind of call it a sequel.
Yeah. So I think it'd be good to talk about that, because a lot of what happens in Alien Romulus is, I'd say, a very sort of definite example of a legacy film.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mostly for the worst.
Yeah.
But we'll go into that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right.
Nice. Shall we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Questing the cinematic void.
Actually, it's worth mentioning before we get into the world of xenomorphs and the like. The Twisters episode, hopefully next week.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think that's all set up reasonably nicely.
So if you were holding out for that,
it's still happening.
It's still happening. I actually still haven't seen it. I need to go and see it.
Yeah. I think it'll be on streaming at some point soon, so you might save a bit of cash, but you have to.
Okay. Yeah, either way. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that one. But in the meantime, Alien
Remus. No, Alien and what was it? Alien Rhombus.
Alien Rhombus.
Yeah.
Let's start with legacy sequels, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Because as sort of alluded to in the intro, Alien Rhombombuloid is very much a legacy film or sequel or whatever.
Yeah.
I was wondering what you think the purpose of legacy films is, because I've been thinking about this quite a lot. I was writing some notes down about it, and I was just, I couldn't quite get a clear distinction of what the intention is. Well, maybe I can get the sort of clear distinction of what the intention is from a corporate perspective.
I was going to say, is it from the public's point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder, like, what that is, what you think that is.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you watch a film enough, right, the characters almost sort of become your friends, don't they? So the opportunity to get to kind of hang out with them, or at least to hang out in that universe again, is probably quite appealing.
Yeah.
I had that with T2 Trainspotting when that came out.
Okay.
I was like really, really jazzed for that, because I'd loved Trainspotting so much and I've watched it so many times, and I knew it was in the hands of someone I considered to be capable. So I was excited for it, and I have not mixed feelings about that. I broadly love it, but I think it actually does suffer from occasional forays into the issues that we'll talk about in more detail later.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just it's people aging and wanting to look back as well. So I think with this, with the Rhombustank, and and also with films like Doctor Sleep as well.
Okay,
I know that was based on the novel as well, and Stephen King wrote it first, etc. But even like New Nightmare, have you seen that? The Wes Craven thing? Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And the Evil Dead remake, there's no characters from the original, although there's definitely, actually that's directed by Fede Alvarez.
Evil Dead remake. There you go, crossover,
Yeah.
Link.
Blade Runner 2049,
Mm-hmm.
you get to hang out with Harrison Ford again, you get to see where his characters ended up. that was a more of an enigmatic reason, because like you don't necessarily need to know where he goes really, but the world of that franchise is very kind of unusual, so they can get away with just putting him somewhere. And yeah, so I think they exist for the public to look back. So there's a nostalgic element that word we love so much.
Yeah.
It's almost like you don't have to feel the sort of. Sometimes I feel like watching a cash grab sequel can feel a bit dirty. We don't really feel that with these, because they're like a legacy and they're honouring. They're being advertised as honouring the original's legacy, like, and preserving it. And quite often the people who make it have kind of conduct interviews where they explain how the original was like the best film they'd ever seen growing up, and so it kind of occupies a more prestigious space.
Okay, than just a direct sequel.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents on that matter.
I would argue that they can be equally as cash grabby.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, the actual intent of them is completely the same as a sequel, as a kind of, an immediate sequel, but they are masked in that marketing move, I think. And that's where the public can get quite excited for Beetlejuice as well. It's happening with that.
Yeah.
The sequel to that. Like, we were in the cinema the other day and they, that you could hear people kind of chattering about it after the trailer happened. And
Yeah.
because it's been so long, it's not really a bog standard sequel. It's not like Jaws 2, is it?
No,
there's
true.
enough time has passed for people to be like, oh, bloody hell, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. They are cash grabby, especially Disney has bought Fox, so they've got all the Fox properties.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's easier to see it that way when you've got like a sort of massive conglomerate, like Disney, that own everything. No, I think that's interesting, the idea about wanting to stay in those worlds. But I also think that if that's the case, why just not watch the original films?
Yeah, it's a good point. And almost always the originals are, ultimately, with time, considered better.
Yeah.
Like, so what's better, New Nightmare or Nightmare on Elm Street? The first one, like the original. Obviously, the original.
Yeah.
New Nightmare is kind of weirdly interesting because there's like a meta thing.
Yeah, it's a sort of critique of that, isn't it? Almost.
Yeah, it's having
something
fun
which was
with it.
especially rife in the horror films of that time.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. Army of Darkness is a similar example.
Yeah.
Like the director is just having loads of fun with this franchise he created and had the good sense not to sell off.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, it is. They're becoming increasingly common, like in the last kind of maybe 10 years or so. Would you say?
Yeah, I think the legacy sequels really, legacy sequel or film more broadly, is definitely come into its own over the last 10 years. I just think it's really bizarre, like that they sort of exist.
Yeah.
And I never quite shake that feeling as I'm watching them. I certainly didn't shake that feeling when I was watching Alien Rambambalam.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the films exist to reference something so beloved, like a cultural touchstone, which for so many people was a significant moment for them. In terms of the way they engage with the medium.
Yeah.
What we're also having is people like ourselves, if we consider Alien, obviously came out in 1979. We weren't born then.
Yeah.
So the relationship we have with it is almost through this sense of prestige that was already there when we were born.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
So I guess you could maybe say that, these films exist as like a sort of a way of reminding people of that prestige, a way of reminding them that this franchise exists.
Yeah.
And I think from a corporate perspective, a lot of these films, Alien and Blade Runner, there's potential for a sort of exhaustive mythology.
Oh, yeah.
That can be, expanded into a universe, because that's what it's all about now. I think we talked about this before, but, there's there's still that at the end of our sort of the main road out of our sort of area of Bristol, there's still that massive Ghostbusters poster. It says a frozen empire.
Yeah.
I think there's got to be the sort of subtitles always got to be empire or something that suggests something grander and bigger, and there's more to unpack, and it leaves it open for the studio to continually mine this sort of mythology that they're either creating themselves or that's already there.
Yeah, but it exists in the original in very subtle ways.
Yeah, exactly.
And intentionally subtly. That's what annoys me sometimes. It's like they, actually quite often a mythology can exist in the background, and it exists to pique your interest and to keep you engaged. But once you expand on it, it's like revealing the magic trick. It's not. It's a bit tepid. I find that usually when, particularly with the kind of Ghostbusters, the most recent Ghostbusters, I actually haven't seen them in their entirety. I've got halfway through the first one and I've seen clips of the second one, but I was never a huge fan of the original franchise anyway, but they do seem like they're unnecessarily mining territory a bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
I think it's especially interesting in the case of films like Alien and Blade Runner, in the sense that they are both films that can be enjoyed in a very singular nature.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the, brilliance of those films or the thematic density of those films relies on that singular nature.
Yeah.
The ambiguity in Alien, I think we've said this before, but the ambiguity in Alien is central to the sort of the impact or the power of that film.
The terror,
You don't know what it is, why it's there, and the things that are given to you are given, through the characterization of setting, like the opening of Alien, which Alvarez mines. Yes. Actually, I thought was one of the better things about Ron Bomber running out of them.
Rubius.
Was that was that sort of idea of characterizing the setting.
Yeah,
which Alvarez sort of does away with pretty quickly to allow the characters to do all the sort of expositional heavy lifting. But what I love so much about the original Alien is that Scott's confidence in the sort of the silence in the film, and that silence generates an ambiguity which then lends itself to the sort of broader themes of the film, which or not just necessarily thematically speaking, but just as a horror movie it just works.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that particularly in the case of Alien, that there's a bit of franchise that spawned out of this, to sort of explore a mythology which, as you say, will only lead to potential disappointment.
I completely I mean, you go back to the way that the screenplay handles the company. And I mean that, like, they don't call it Weyland-Yutani, they call it the company for a reason. Because it's like, obviously you've got the capitalist critique in there, which again exists very subtly and needs to be subtle because otherwise it'll be preachy and overbearing. But like the fact that they don't call it Weyland-Yutani, they could have called it that. And Dan O'Bannon probably knew what it was called. I imagine he gave that note to Cameron for the sequel. But like, you don't need to know the name, and it kind of it creates this aura around the entity that these characters are being controlled by that is mysterious and quite eerie, and that that atmosphere. That's why the atmosphere is generated.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, and it's interesting that what you say earlier about the idea, about people being disappointed with this sort of mythology. I always think of Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
do you know what I mean? Going, despite having this sort of luxury of a seemingly endless universe to explore, people still have rigid ideas about how that universe should go and how it should operate. And I just think it's really interesting in the case of, well, I guess particularly Alien, the films sort of deviate but always come back to the same thing. And I don't think in the case of Ridley Scott's sort of earlier two efforts of Prometheus and Alien Covenant that he was necessarily concerned about reminding the public about Alien. I don't think that was his intention. I think he was trying to give a sort of, find a sort of lofty backstory to fit the sort of the prestigious place that Alien has in the minds of film fans. The idea of trying to fuse, lofty, ancient real world mythology and stories of creationism with this sort of identity of the alien itself. I mean, baffling. Prometheus is baffling. But in a way, I kind of, as I've got older, and maybe to contradict what I've already said about the power of Alien's ambiguity being so essential to it, I kind of like it for its baffling, almost pomposity. It's just ridiculous. But it's obviously there is like a real intention there to sort of to really double down on what, on that sort of combination of ideas.
I think with Prometheus, Scott, I mean, I haven't seen it in a really long time. I haven't seen it since it came out, actually. It it was baffling to me as well. I took two mates, and I was embarrassed because I'd bigged it up as well. I was like, mate, Ridley Scott's making another film in the Alien universe. Come and see it with me, please. I don't want to go on my own, because at the time that was like a big social no.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, not as a teenager.
Yeah, and I was disappointed actually, and I had to lie to myself for a bit to pretend that I liked it. But you said something interesting to me earlier, which is largely what you just repeated there, in the fact that like it is its own thing. So like you can say maybe Alien is horror sci-fi, but Prometheus is sci-fi horror, right? The sci-fi is totally front and center.
Yeah,
and Ridley Scott matured as a filmmaker, for better or worse. He's a real hit and miss kind of director.
Certainly. Particularly with his sequels.
Yes, yeah, and particularly when he has big ideas.
Yeah.
And you know, it was a swing and a miss at the time, but in the eyes of a lot of people, actually, they hold it in quite high regard. I was talking to someone at work, and he was like, "I actually quite like Prometheus and Covenant," and so that it's kind of endured a little bit, and it's got a life of its own, possibly because it doesn't rely wholly on the mythology, or the lack of mythology, if you will, of Alien. It kind of creates its own thing.
Agreed. It's also interesting that, weirdly enough, like I think Scott is as he typically is with all of his films, is very bolshy about any sort of critical, consensus. Yeah. But to me, it's interesting that Alien Covenant felt more like an Alien movie.
Yeah.
So like you've got Prometheus, which I need to rewatch. Like you, I've not seen it for a very long time, but I sort of admire it.
Yeah.
Or if not, I'm baffled by it. But there's something in that, I think, like you touched upon. But with Alien Covenant, it's almost like a sort of like tepid best of sort of run through of all the best things about Alien.
Yeah, I remember
It's weird. It's a weird sort of 360. Is it 180, 360? I forgot. For him to go from this sort of expansive world mythology building to then localize it again and basically make an Alien light.
Yeah, Alien Light, basically Alien with a 15 certificate.
Yeah, and with a subtle smattering of what he tried to explore before.
Oh yeah, in that opening with the Peter, what's his name? Peter Wayland? Is it Pete Wayland? I don't know.
Oh yeah,
and Guy Pearce in old age makeup.
Yeah, fucking hell, yeah.
There's so many strange moments in both those films. Like I remember the sort of weird space zombie walking on its like, with these sort of crab legs. Do you remember that in Prometheus?
Yeah.
They open the shuttle door and it's just there. And they blast it with a flamethrower, and you're like, "What the fuck was that?" Yeah. That's what I remember about Prometheus a lot. But strange films, but bold, and they'd really swing. And they have their own ideas, and I like you, I kind of admire them for that.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out. I mean, Prometheus was 2012, Covenant 2017.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's worth pointing out that the idea of legacy films. I think legacy films have always kind of existed, and obviously a lot of films will borrow ideas from others for their own. Yeah. But the existence of them as like a regular feature in our in the releases, the schedule of releases. Yeah. Over the year, it's not really started coming into its own, as you say, for the last decade. So those two films, I think, are sort of separate from that criticism in that regard. And I think also what's key to bring up in this discussion, I know we try and avoid talking about comic book movies, but in 2012 was when Avengers came out, right? So that's when you've got the start of this sort of serialized, mythologizing, sort of interlinked, expansive world building kind of film franchises, and I think that has had a huge impact on pretty much every major franchise and studio that owns them. And as we've mentioned earlier, 20th Century Fox, now owned by Disney, of course. Now they start pumping out these sort of legacy films in the Alien universe. It's no coincidence, I don't think.
Oh no, definitely not. No, they have a winning formula, and like when you think about how well Deadpool and Wolverine is doing. It's grossed over $1 billion.
Has it?
Yeah, wow. Expect more, because that relies wholly on previous, things that have entered the public's consciousness of as being either naff or great. They put it all into this film, and the people are going to see it. So that the message that sends is we want more. Yeah. So we're going to get more legacy. So that is not going away anytime soon.
No, and I find that really interesting because. going back to the start of the discussion, we said, what is the point of them? Is the point, is it, the origin of the sort of franchise is foundational, and then they build upon and build a new story upon that. But my sort of feeling about that is, as well, it's all well and good using it's foundational, but if you're literally using lines from past movies and quoting them verbatim in your new film, what does that say about where the trajectory of this new franchise goes? Is it ever going to be able to leave behind the sort of legacy that cemented it and is the reason why this film now exists? Do you know what I mean? Our audience is going to be happy with that because we've talked about this a lot, about the impact of fan culture on cinema. And whilst it's lovely to have like a community of people rally around something they love and build bonds over, I do feel like there's a sort of rapacious attitude to always wanting more of the same thing because they've got what they like. They've got these universes. They've got these things that they'll die in a hill for. Yeah. And you offer them difference and it doesn't always go well. I mean, look at fucking The Eternals, I mean, I'm not saying The Eternals was a critical darling and a sort of commercial flop. It's universally panned, but the idea of like someone coming in and injecting something new into these worlds, often rebuffed. Also, what was the second of the newer Star Wars films? That's probably a better example.
Oh, The Last Jedi.
Which I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, and I didn't love it, but I kind of liked it because it was like a middle finger to Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
And that's something that I quite like because I'm growing increasingly fatigued by this idea that a group of people on the internet control what, artists and filmmakers commit their sort of lives to.
Yeah.
But then another part of me thinks, well, that's just one part of Hollywood, but it is a part of Hollywood that is increasingly dominant and has an impact on the entire pyramid in general. So I don't know.
The Last Jedi is a really interesting example because the message of it was you don't need to construct your life around what came before you. You can be your own thing. That was the message of the film. Yeah. And like fans hated it. Of course they hated it, like because they want the references, right? And they want the hark backs to, and what Force Awakens did with basically being plot wise incredibly similar to A New Hope. It was such a bold move by Rian Johnson to have that message, and a really lovely message as well. Just like be your own person in general, like thinking more broadly about the kind of audiences that go to see Star Wars, children. Like that's a nice message to have, and then for that to be shit on, I thought was a real shame. But yeah, it just speaks to the kind of what people are hungry for, and it's just a shame, really.
I mean, I think you're right in saying that this isn't going to go anywhere. And I think we're going to see a lot more films. I just think it's interesting that the industry is so IP hungry. I caught the tail end of I think it was a Hot Ones review with Vince Vaughn.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
It's not something I watch regularly.
Yeah.
But he was saying about how sort of IP hungry the industry is. It's desperate just for anything they can sort of like
Yeah.
And what better way is it than to, instead of finding a new IP, can get an old one, and bring it and sort of siphon it through the lens of the now, which is to me is always going to be, there's always going to be something problematic about that, because particularly if the name of the game is purely just to remind audiences of what existed before, I always think about like Terminator. I think probably Terminator is one of the sci-fi sort of franchises that's been battered the most by this. Definitely. By sort of taking all of the great stuff about Terminator and just like, I don't know, just turning it into a sort of like
pretty bog standard action.
And it just makes me wonder, like, how much steam do these kinds of films actually have before they just, they stop, they just lose the overarching sort of thematic brilliance that made them so great in the first place. I definitely found myself wondering that with Alien, Romy. That there was bits I quite liked about it, and I was sort of kind of happy that I was watching it. But I think that's purely because that's the side of me that yearns for nostalgia. That's the side of me that yearns to be in those worlds. But I find those two sides of me battle. But there's the side of me that goes, no, this is fucking mad. Like, you should kill it and make something else. Give like half this to an up and coming filmmaker and see what they do with it. But and then there's the other part of me that's like, look, it's it was xenomorphs, and I do sort of suppress that a lot because I think it's important to, particularly in the sort of landscape of things.
There was enough of them to watch already.
Yeah, exactly.
Got the original. I call them the core four, even though the latter two are not well regarded at all. They still exist as sequels pretty definitively, and they're not really legacy films at all. Like, you know, I do think that there is a place for these kinds of films. That is, if the themes generated by the first film. So I don't know. Like, okay, I'm gonna give T2 as an example. So Trainspotting was all about a kind of generation in their 20s, right? And that the culture that they absorbed and the kind of cool Britannia thing, right? That was what that had going for it. And the updated version was about how that has moved on and how like especially men can't really grapple with that idea that what they loved so dearly isn't the same anymore. Like, so that's a cool idea, and maybe that's even a reason to make a sequel. If you know, like, I'm sure everyone experiences this, and the chief reason why nostalgia can be so sort of damaging, I think, is just a refusal to accept that there is it's going to be a generational gap between people in their 20s and people in their 40s, and like, that is a reason to make a sequel, maybe or maybe not. I think it is.
As a comment on the nature of the sort of cultural obsession with nostalgia.
Yeah. But, you know, going to something like Blade Runner 2049, what was the reason for that being made, do you think? You know, the equivalent of... Because the themes and ideas in Blade Runner I consider to be sort of over-industrialization and advertising and
AI.
Also, dehumanize, you know, the kind of depersonalization, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What did the new one... Because it was really successful and I quite like it, but like, what did the new one bring, do you think?
It was critically successful, but commercially it wasn't.
No, it lost money,
which is interesting.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Interesting in itself. I mean, I've only seen Blade Runner 2049 once, when I went to see it in London when it first came out. So I don't really remember it that well, but to me, there's like an element of prestige behind that isn't behind Terminator sequels.
Yes, yeah.
Even this Alien sequel, with the greatest respect to Fede Alvarez, you know, he made a couple of like middling horror films, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, and, you know, we'll talk about him and his effort in a bit, but, you know, in comparison to someone like Villeneuve, you know, who is one of the, I mean, I don't know if he was then, but he's one of the few directors in sort of mainstream Hollywood that has a dud and still given loads of money to make sci-fi films.
Yeah, that's true. Actually.
You know, so there's an element. I mean, that's not to say that 2049 was a perfect movie because of that.
Yeah.
But you know, I think there's an element of prestige there that almost separates it.
Yeah.
Just in the eyes, perhaps more critically.
Yeah.
Then obviously commercially, because it didn't do very well.
No, it didn't.
And it's interesting they didn't do very well, but they still allowed him to do Dune.
Yeah.
Which ended up obviously being a success.
That was successful. But, everything, you know, I didn't think it would be either because it came out like in 2020.
Yeah.
There we go. I don't know. Yeah, I think Blade Runner 2049, because I really liked it. I think maybe the themes of the first one were preserved in the second one. You know, that kind of thing. A lot of the lofty ideas are a bit timeless anyway. So it's not like, you know, it wasn't like a Vietnam War film, which had something to say about the era and about the time. I suppose the whole concept of science fiction is it's looking ahead into the future. And also there was something really, my favourite moments in Blade Runner 2049 is the relationship he has with this one step ahead artificial intelligence who is not only, they're not a replicant, they're like one step further of being like literally a hologram, and how he feels about that. And there's that bit at the end where the giant version of her points at him and goes, "You're lonely." And there's something great about that, and maybe that could be considered a worthy updating of all the themes, I suppose.
Yeah, I also think, you know, one of the things I remember quite liking about it was there was a sort of an attempt to replicate the sort of meditative approach to the use of setting.
Yeah.
I think Villeneuve understood the power of that as a storytelling device, the same way Scott understood it with both Blade Runner and Alien.
Yeah.
And almost characterized it. You know, you don't need characters to say, "Oh, this world's really shit. We're all unwell and poor, and there's these cunts at the top that've got loads of money." Which a lot of modern films do.
Yeah.
The world will do that. If you let the world breathe and have space and just have like shots of the characters sort of navigating the tight urban spaces that are smoky and grim, that communicates that. That's enough. And I do think Villeneuve did a pretty good job of communicating that. I do remember having some sort of issues with the sort of revamped nature of it, but I wonder if that's more because I hold Blade Runner, the original, in such high esteem. I do remember liking it a lot when I saw 2049, but it was one of those films that the more I thought about it, the more it sort of dampened.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
But I think, again, that's a film I'll probably have to revisit before I commit to that. But I do think it's definitely true, or at least in this room, that there's an element of prestige there because of Villeneuve, because of the sort of like, it felt like a filmmaker's film. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the other ones don't. They do sort of, like the Terminator films and the RoboCop remake, just fucking pants.
Oh, yeah.
They are literally films that are like, actiony. It's like if someone gave like a Canon Films director like a competent film crew and a massive budget. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not that the people who worked in Canon Films were necessarily competent. By the way, I love you, Canon Films.
No, I know what you mean.
The same sort of hackneyed handling of like action sequences and the sort of all the thematic things that made those films so great. It's almost like we don't really need that. We're just going to sort of shoehorn it into like 5 or 10 minute exposition dumps.
Yeah,
that tends to be the way that a lot of like modern Hollywood handles, the sort of background stuff that made those films so iconic.
Completely, yeah. And you're rarely given enough time, I think, on this sort of film sets to consider the original to an extent where like that you should really, because obviously once you make a film that's really successful, you probably didn't mean to. You were trying, but I can imagine Alien, Ridley Scott wasn't thinking I'm going to make one of the most influential science fiction horror films of all time when he's making it.
No.
But then with, as time passes and the thing you've made is being handed over to the studios, it would, the people that are going to get involved aren't going to have nearly as much control all of a sudden. And I know that's nothing new. I'm not saying anything new by saying that, but it is true. Like, and so it's just a shame that you get these sort of over-marketed. I think they're a bit over-marketed as well.
Yeah. Is it possibly unfair to, because I was thinking this as well as like a sort of counterpoint to my own sort of beliefs, but is it unfair to sort of criticize these films too much? Because I sort of feel like I criticize the industry more for making them because these films are just a sort of response to the brilliance of the original films, but they can never achieve that brilliance. Firstly, for what you said, because, there's no way they can do that. But obviously they exist because of those films. But, it's also a completely different landscape of Hollywood. And I often think, is it just because I'm quite cynical about these things? I have my natural response is going to be, oh, this is going to be shit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I often think that, like, because talking about nostalgia, it's interesting. We talk about it in a cultural level, but like we just lauded praise on Alien and Blade Runner, but we won't do that for the sequels.
No.
What does that say about our relationship with that sort of with nostalgia? And is it preventing us from seeing good in other stuff? But then the other part of me thinks, yeah, but these films probably still shouldn't exist anyway. So I don't know. But, do you know what I mean? Like, the industry is different. It's changed from the industry of Ridley Scott, 1979. It's a completely different beast.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what I mean is, perhaps in a roundabout way, is that it's probably a little bit cruel to compare the films that exist in these franchises now to them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I think there is an element of...
There's an element of it, I think.
The industry is just changing. There's so many different ways to watch something like this now. Back in 79, it would have been VHS or cinema, and the VHS version would look shit. And
did they have VHS in the 70s?
Yeah, so it was around, but only just 1976. So probably a very new and emerging medium. The idea of home video at all. So, there's that.
And that takes, that adds a the fact that a lot of people, because that tends to happen with technology, doesn't it? It comes out, particularly home technology, and it doesn't really take root in the sort of lives of a population of people for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So there's an air of mystique there to all of the films before that, including Alien.
Yeah.
You can only access this one way.
Yep.
In the cinema.
Yeah.
And that's, and now, as you say, there are so many ways in which to engage with media, both old and new, and in a way that is almost could be viewed as sort of dispassionate.
Yeah. I do think that Alien existed in an era where fewer set pieces were kind of employed. So you think about Alien, right? You think about the first Alien. There are 2 set pieces I can think of. 2 key. I mean, there are other set pieces, obviously, but I'm thinking 2 key ones, which is the chest busting scene, and then the T- bit. That's pretty much it. Everything else is just scenes, effective scenes, scary scenes, but they're not set pieces, right? They're not relying on special effects for a kind of visual, which kind of takes over the entire scene for a bit, right?
Yeah.
It's largely acting and more traditional ways of, things lurking in the shadows. Whereas now, you think about even Prometheus, that's like fucking 12 or 13. This new one has about 6 or 7 I can think of. And so I feel like there's definitely, the industry has changed in that sense as well. The actual content is changing because the demand is different. I think people's attention spans have different.
Yeah, agree. Yeah.
And you see that in Doctor Sleep as well. Have you seen that, the sequel to The Shining?
No, I haven't. No,
it's not bad at all, but it really suffers from it's just fractured. Like The Shining is, but the beauty of The Shining is its single location, like dread and terror and like the sort of long
confidence in the silent spaces between the key moments.
Yeah, and just Kubrick having the balls to hold on a face for fucking 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And this is lacking. There's no confidence in this second one, and it's kind of scattershot. And there's a really, really weird. There's about 12 set pieces in it.
Yeah. I got that impression from the trailer. It was very set piece heavy.
Yeah. I do like it. I think it.
I've heard a lot of people be quite complimentary about it. Actually,
yeah.
Maybe I should go for it. The sort of stuffy film fan in me was like, no.
Don't expect The Shining, but it's like
no.
It's kind of it does the legacy thing fine. It's not particularly irritating. It doesn't smack you in the face with references, and when it does, it's like they're like quite welcome. They're quite nice. It's just like a musical cue or a bit of the design on the carpet kind of makes a small appearance. It's not. There's no. I don't think there are any line callbacks, like dialogue callbacks. Anyway, I banged on about Doctor Sleep for a while now.
No, it's fine. I think it's interesting. That's an interesting point you pick up there about the sort of idea of the way in which audiences respond to movies, and I think that's. I think this is potentially dangerous ground because you can come across to sound like a bit of a twat, but I think that the way films are structured now does indicate, particularly in the mainstream realm, a sort of general inability to stay engaged in sort of dialogue, or sort of exterior shots or location shots or whatever for prolonged periods. We sort of talked about that in the context of this new Alien film. Same thing,
completely. Yeah, and I think that the filmmakers that are responsible for these legacy sequels underestimate just how important the originals were in terms of how quiet and calm they can be at moments. And the sequels instead inhabit this kind of attention deficit type filmmaking, which
maybe that's enforced by studio system though.
Yeah, completely.
I do feel that a lot of this is sort of decided in boardrooms, not to sound sort of conspiratorial, but I think that this push towards a sort of like an action filled, set piece filled kind of cinema, it is a symptom of I guess, or a response to a kind of culture that appreciates easily digestible forms of media.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I do think it's I feel like that's a response to that. I think.
Yeah, completely. It's just it is a shame because part of what makes the original so great is their pacing. You know, I'm thinking.
I feel like it's a distortion, man. I think coming to this sort of conclusion, it's like it is like nostalgia itself. I think you said something similar earlier, but it's like when you obsess over a memory so much, you distort it to the point it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
And then all that's left is just this sort of feeling of like melancholy.
Yeah.
Because you can't quite picture what it is that you loved about it.
Yeah.
And when you go back to it, it's sort of all you've got is what's now exists now. Do you know what I mean? And and it must be especially bizarre if you were born in that time and you remember seeing it for the first time and now you've got all this. It must be stranger, but I do feel like it just distorts the whole sort of lineage of the medium a little bit. Changes
that's
it.
really interesting actually. Yeah,
it's really bizarre.
Completely.
And a bit depressing actually.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think that's part of the parcel of nostalgia.
Yes,
sometimes it's just depressing.
Sometimes great, but in my experience anyway, mostly it's sort of it's a duplicitous beast.
Yes, definitely. You know, to kind of wrap that up, I do think the sort of legacy thing is less abrasive with certain genres as well. So with horror and with it's a genre I love dearly, and as do you, I can be like I found it quite confrontational being presented with this legacy sequel that was so obsessed with the like lines and characters of the original, whereas like with another franchise, I'm thinking superhero films, you know, like Spider-Man Far From Home had callbacks to other franchises.
Most overt kind,
I didn't mind it though. I was sat there like, yeah, give it to me. I don't care. Like I like seeing these characters again. So
I wasn't. There's not as much prestige in superhero films in general.
Yeah, maybe it's just.
I mean, the MCU's done a pretty good job of robbing it of prestige, anyway, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe because I knew what I was in for. And therefore, I was much more receptive to it and kind of ate it up in that instance. Anyway, I was very much like came out of the cinema beaming.
Wow, okay.
So it didn't.
And you're not a fan of superhero films. It's worth pointing out.
No,
certainly modern ones. I know we wax lyrical about the original Spider-Man in 2001,
2002. Yeah.
Oh shit!
Oh mate, unlucky. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm gonna leave. It's Ben's podcast.
No, it's like. It was weird to me that I didn't mind it. I was thinking about it earlier because I was getting ready to kind of trash Legacy, and then I remember, but you like that. It hasn't aged well in my mind, that film. You know, looking back on it, I don't think I particularly want to rewatch it. But at the time, it had an effect on me that was a wholly positive one. It was like, I was like, fucking hell, Tobey Maguire's back. Better than ever. So there we go. I don't know whether it's a genre thing as well. It might be different for different genres. I just sort of wanted to highlight that a little bit.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Before we move on, what are the good and bad parts of Legacy? Because I was thinking about so for example, from what I can gather from what we've said, that using the setting in a as a sort of character is positive. It's not like a bad way to do in a legacy film.
Completely, yeah. It's set in the same universe. Why wouldn't it?
So exactly. So that would be one sort of, I guess, way of sort of a good legacy film would know how to use setting effectively.
Yeah.
What would be like another good thing or a bad thing for a legacy film to do that would sort of muddy the waters of the film that it's trying to sort of evoke memories of and also of its own?
Okay, so I think we'll start on the good. I'll say a good one, and then you say maybe a good one or something like that. I like the use of a kind of updated score, which has a through line of the original song, because so much of your memory is associated with sounds and like tastes, apparently. So if you hear a musical cue which is from the original, then it triggers something in your brain which is I feel is a lot deeper than if you just hear the line said re-fed to you. And I like that about legacy sequels. I like hearing the sounds again, updated.
Romulus was
big time. Yeah.
Just Jerry Goldsmith's score, basically.
Yeah, and that's why I thought it was a really strong. Partially, why I thought it was a really strong opening.
I was on board.
Yeah.
initially.
So sound, I think, a updated. I think it is cheap to just literally use the same again. Download the MP3, but an updated soundtrack with hints to the original I really like, and is something. Maybe it's just me being indulgent, but that's what I personally think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got tactful use of setting and a slightly sort of not improved upon would be the wrong phrase, and a slightly modified soundtrack.
Yeah.
I actually can't think of any more good ones.
I've got one more good one. All right.
Go on.
No characters from the original, all new. Right.
Okay.
So the characters, I think.
Not like would you tolerate a link to a character? So like a brother's cousin's dog walking best mate.
I don't know. I think
not a dog walker's best mate. Not a man that's sort of like a dog walks like a dog.
I feel like it works best for me when new characters inhabit the same world and like their interactions with the world are different. Like Aliens does that really well. I know Sigourney Weaver's back, but you have this new team as well, and also Aliens isn't a legacy sequel, so it's fine. But I think the use of a new cast with new imperatives is really quite crucial.
Okay, so by that token, then on the flip side,
yes, a bad thing is overuse of previous characters who, sometimes they've died. And you think they've gone.
Romulus.
Yeah,
we'll
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the more egregious things about the film, I think.
Completely, yeah.
Okay, that's good. Well, recycling lines of dialogue.
Yeah, bad,
terrible. Not necessarily just verbatim, that's bad, but also paraphrasing them too.
Yeah.
I think paraphrasing them is a lazy attempt to evoke the same spirit of what's originally said in the films of yesteryear.
Completely.
But I think I see through it, man. I think that's bullshit.
Yeah, and also why, like, in what world would the coincidence, the coincidence, because the factor of coincidence has to be so narrow for a character? I'm thinking, obviously films and franchises can have their own internal logic, so a character doesn't need to. Technically, they could say the same thing, I suppose, like a catchphrase or whatever. But it takes me out of the film a little bit. It reminds me that I'm watching a film which is a legacy sequel of another film, as opposed to being absorbed into a world. It really throws me out.
Yeah.
It's like seeing a bad visual effects shot or something. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm in a cinema. Fuck. Yeah.
What else? Maybe like I'm trying to think what I've seen in Romulus now without spoiling the sort of review section of the episode.
Of course, yeah.
The direct sort of visual references to scenes as well.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
It's hard to do it without, but there's a few moments in Romulus where it was like, yeah, come on.
Yeah.
There were some quite tasteful ones. Like I liked the bit with the chains. Sort of reminded me of the first Alien. I thought that's
the liquid. Yeah,
that's like like eagle-eyed stuff.
But that
and that maybe appeals to me because I'm a sort of sweaty loser. But like,
I feel like the production that goes back to the world it's in as well.
Yeah,
because it's feasible that these ships are constructed in a similar fashion.
Yeah, there's sort of like grubby lo-fi aesthetic that betrays actually how technologically advanced they are.
Yeah. I think as soon as the actions of the characters and the dialogue of the characters starts to become recycled is when it throws me out, because I'm like, it's like it's like the first film is an artifact in the world that you are in. And you've watched it.
Yeah.
Whereas production design, like, all for it being the same, I think, or at least similar.
Yeah. And treated with similar tact, I guess. Because I imagine there are plenty of films where I'm trying to think of examples. I'm saying plenty as if there is, but I'm sure there are examples where it isn't very good.
Yeah. Oh, well, you could argue Alien Covenant, the production design is like a total bafflingly different.
Same with Prometheus, like which is surprising for Scott, because I know we're talking about. I think there are two for Ridley Scotts sometimes, because like the Ridley. I mean, I guess it just happens when you get older and you change, and so do your creative artistic sensibilities as a filmmaker or any kind of creative. But I think that tact that he deployed, and I guess he was sort of hamstrung by the fact it was 1979.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I appreciated about Rob Bombadil is the fact that tech was still there.
Yeah.
As like I said before, like it's analog, it's clunky, it's grubby, but it's still very technologically advanced. You know, it's still capable of space travel. Whereas in Prometheus, they've got like floating orbs and like
it looks like a toothpaste advert.
Yeah, it's weird. It's just really strange to me that he didn't continue that.
Yeah, I thought it was really strange. Actually, I remember that was one of the things I was disappointed by. Was having the
not enough
visual
sort of like
style.
naff sort of screens and jittering.
Yeah, because it threw me out of the. I was like, what world is this in? Is this even the same? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a sort of fairly agreeable list of do's and don'ts, or good and shits.
Yeah.
Good shits.
Get Villeneuve to do it. Get him to do it every time. Any Legacy sequel, just get Denis on
I wonder
board.
how long it'd take for us to get sick of that, though.
That's true, actually. They'll all be 3 hours long, won't they?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, right. Alien Romulus.
Yep. As I imagine you've already gathered, we were both not that big of a fans. Ultimately,
No, I wasn't. There was this sort of the uncontrollable, gooey, childlike version of me was having quite a good time.
Yeah.
You know, but that was something that I could suppress quite easily at various points in the film.
Yeah,
because the film made it easy to do that. You know, I kind of went in feeling a degree of trepidation about it because it is something I love. I adore the first Alien. You know, it's one of the, to my mind, probably the third best horror film ever made.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But you've been hurt before, right? I mean, Covenant, all right, wasn't shit, but it wasn't great either. I mean,
I don't remember much about Covenant.
No, do I. I remember liking the first 40 minutes and thinking, and then going, Prometheus, baffling, but and I sort of have a kind of like a bit of a soft spot for the other films, but they weren't legacy sequels; they were just sequels.
Yeah, like 3 in Resurrection.
Yeah. Like there is something about those that I sort of.
Three's pretty fun. I like the concept.
I actually quite like Resurrection.
Yeah. That's the one with the basketball game, isn't it?
Yeah. Don't know why, but you know, so it is a franchise that I have a lot of reverence for. Like I remember all the toys and the games, and you know, it's a world that I think has sort of been kind of present throughout my life for a very long time. And what goes back to what we were saying right at the beginning, that it's nice to dip into that. So there was a part of me that was kind of excited because you know, as cynical as I am about the state of Hollywood and as cynical as I am about the sort of decisions that go on behind the scenes that lead to these movies, there's still a part of me that kind of wants to enjoy them.
Oh man, yeah. It's like the broken clock thing as well. I'm like, maybe they might get it right.
Yeah.
Maybe they gave Fede Alvarez complete creative control and Ridley Scott didn't kind of meddle with it too much.
Yeah.
Evidently, I don't think he did. I think he was an exec producer. Actually, that's something.
Then it does feel like the looming spectre of his sort of broader sort of narrative ambition leers over this film.
Oh mate, yeah. Especially in the last act.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah. No, I went in with trepidation and I came out thinking there was a part of me that kind of thought, but the majority of me was just like, man.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do, if it's all right, is I want to get the positives out of the way now. I want to sort of talk about what I enjoyed about it because it wasn't shit. It was like
it's watchable.
Yeah.
It's a watchable in the grand scheme of all of the legacy bollocks that we have to endure. Clatter off our cheeks.
Yeah.
You know.
It wasn't the worst one.
It wasn't the worst one by a country mile. It
Yeah.
was probably one of the better ones.
Yeah. I mentioned the production design already. It was fantastic, like flawless. The links to not only Alien but Aliens as well. It's like a combination of the two, especially in the opening.
Yeah. I liked it. Slight niggle would be the lack of confidence in allowing it to sort of become a character.
Yeah, agreed. It definitely waned as the film drew
sort
on.
of more just like a set usually is treated as just background.
Yeah. A lot of practical effects in this.
Yes,
really cool puppetry.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to reference how the old ones were made, there's no better way to do it than actual puppets. And
agreed.
And you can tell that it's forced them into kind of creative decision making in terms of how it was shot as well. Like quite a lot of it was quite ground level, I thought, or it was like sort of CCTV. Like I quite admired the way it looked in general. Any lofty, huge, massive spaceship shots are quite few and far between. So when they do appear, they're quite nice to look at. And they're not overbearing.
Agree with that.
And so, yeah, I think just kudos to puppetry. I think bring it back because it works, and it forces you into a kind of, I guess, a culture of creative decision making on set, not relying upon afterwards. I think.
Yeah.
You can
Absolutely.
tell. You can tell. Decent setup, like you've mentioned it already. But there's a great shot at the beginning of what reminded me of a really busy London street.
Yeah.
But it's on this sort of mining colony.
Yeah.
And that alone, that whole bit in that moment was really great. And I thought I was in for a bit of a slam dunk at that moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, the first sort of 15, 20 minutes of the movie, I was really taken by it.
Yeah, definitely. Kaylee Spaney, you mentioned to me, and I kind of agree with you that her performance was very good, generally.
Yeah, I think she sort of joins the rank of sort of the leading women of Alien.
Yeah.
In terms of, Noomi Rapace and Catherine Waterston as being decent in films that weren't.
Yeah. I think that I have a few issues with her and comparisons people are making with Ripley, because in my eyes, she massively wasn't Ripley at all.
No,
she was
the
a
film
lot.
did subtly try and make her Ripley.
Oh, especially at the end, with the fucking final line,
and even the bit where the sort of vaguely scantily clad nature of her in the end.
Yeah. And that's a shame because her character wasn't Ripley at all. She was quite timid and she was quite reluctant.
Yeah,
and she wasn't like the kind of feminine hero that Ripley was. Nor did she need to be. I thought it was fine to just have her be a bit wary of her surroundings. I liked that about her. So it was a shame they didn't follow that up, really. And finally, I have some problems with this moment as well. But the creature design at the end was quite shocking. It was quite like, yeah.
I weirdly kind of liked it.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Again, it reminded me of Alien Resurrection.
Yeah, with the human hybrid.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a bit of a defender of that. It's just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
because at that point you just think, God, this isn't the Ridley Scott's Alien anymore. This is fucking wild.
Yeah,
which kind of didn't bother me. Yeah, no, I agree with all that. Do I have anything additional to add? A couple of the set pieces I quite liked.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
I thought the film had a very exuberant pace, which hurt it a lot.
Yeah.
As we've always sort of covered that in the way we talk about sort of the pacing of modern films more broadly. But I think there was a couple of quite good sequences that could have probably actually stayed with for a bit longer.
Yeah.
Probably would have got more mileage out of them.
Completely.
The film. I think you said this, and I sort of nicked it when I was writing my review on Letterboxd.
It's all right. No,
like the way the film plays fast and loose with the science of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though that felt kind of a bit tongue in cheek towards the end, which I kind of liked.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
The bit with the anti-grav and the gravity inside the ship with the acid in the air. I thought that was quite a cool set piece.
It was, yeah.
I think there could have been a bit more scope to be a bit more to linger with that and have more confidence with that.
Yeah, make it longer. Yeah, that was a great idea. Whoever thought of that idea, that could have been a 20-minute sequence.
But it was like 5, and I don't know. Again, I think in terms of the whole film more broadly, it was very representative of that sort of speed in which you wanted to rush through it and go, oh, remember this, But
there's a bit as well with like an X-ray wand, and she sort of hovers it over her arm, and you can see her bone, and you're like, oh, I know what you're going to use that for. They fucking scupper it. They use it for like 2 seconds. And,
yeah.
But again, a really cool idea, just executed far too quickly.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to seeing a chest busting sequence with that X-ray wand.
Yeah, the chest bursting sequence was nowhere near impactful enough, and I know that's hard to do. I was thinking about this when I was writing about it, but all of the Alien films are, they rely on what is now a very familiar biological sort of cycle, which is the facehugger impregnates through the larynx into the throat, down to your chest or whatever, laser fucking a tiny xenomorph that bursts out of you. That is well known among most people that watch films, even people that aren't even that savvy with films know that's how what happens.
Yes.
So the idea that I think it's always going to be a hard sell for a filmmaker to reinvent that. And I was kind of thinking the only way you could sort of do it is by making it fucking grim as fuck.
Yeah.
Like, because, I mean, the first Alien, it's pretty grim, but again, that's what, 1979?
Yeah.
You could be grimmer now.
Oh, yeah.
and
100%, yeah.
and not necessarily to the point where it becomes like a fucking like
Torture porn.
But like you could do something with it where it's really fucking hell.
Yeah, something different.
And I felt that was a bit of a wasted opportunity, especially given, as I've said, the fact that the sort of the biological sort of cycle that the alien uses is so well known, and it is admittedly, and I wouldn't like to have been in their shoes trying to figure that out.
Yeah, no, God,
because that's hard.
Yeah, it is. I think I'm just trying to think of how you could reinvent it a little bit. I mean, they almost did with the X-ray wand, and I was really gunning for that to be a sequence. That
one of the better moments in Prometheus was she's trying to operate on herself.
Oh, it's the best scene in Prometheus.
Yeah.
By
and
far.
I was like, God, so there is like opportunities. If you can think of a way, there is a way, surely, to sort of breathe some life into that. And I was a bit disappointed that one, it was very safe in that way.
Yeah.
And two, it was brief.
So, yeah.
15, which is another problem. I think.
I agreed. Yeah, I think maybe have it so the chest busting, so the xenomorph, the tiny xenomorph, it goes wrong. Have it try to come out of the front, and it doesn't quite manage it for whatever reason. There's like a rib in the way, and so it goes out the side or something. I don't know. Maybe just as throwing it out there to.
There's someone like hastily trying to like pull it out or yank it or stab it or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, there you go.
Yeah, there's a couple of ideas.
We're going to direct the next Alien film.
Yeah. And if anyone nicks those, we will be suing you.
Yeah.
No, I think the rating was I was a bit, because I didn't know much about this film when I walked into it.
I deliberately abstained from learning anything about it.
Yeah, to see the 15, I thought immediately, I was like, that's Disney, that.
Of course it is. Yeah. I mean, they don't want to, if an 18 it's hard to make a sort of financially lucrative film that's an 18.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a sort of horror movie but like even, which I guess Alien Romulus is, but it's
big budget one though.
Exactly.
High concept.
You're not gonna get you don't get many 18s that have got a big budget behind them.
No, Christ no, and especially not recently.
Right.
It's different. I know the rating system's different in America. It's just an R, isn't it? So you get
rated R. Yeah.
So, but then again, like it's clear to me that they've probably asked for some cuts to reduce the amount of gore.
I mean, the goriest bit is at the end when she gives birth to the fucking Prometheus thing.
That's right. Yeah.
We'll get to that. Yeah. I wasn't overly keen on the script. I thought the script at points was quite naff.
Yeah.
I thought they really tried to lean into that sort of like adolescent thing.
Okay.
Do you want to see my willy?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. I don't know. Is it going to benefit the film?
Yeah.
Not the 15, it won't.
Yeah.
The film rating. I just sort of, I don't know, like it felt, it's really hard to write adolescent dialogue. It is fucking hard.
Kudos to the British actors in it who were like pretty annoying but bearable to watch.
Yes.
It was a bit, that threw me off as well. The fact that they would like, this kind of mining colony like thousands of years from now, and this is like three blokes from Luton.
Yeah.
I guess maybe, in the United States, they're going to be less familiar with that lingo, so it would be a bit otherworldly. But
I liked that they were sort of the children of parents that had died as a result of this sort of morally bankrupt hyper-capitalist system.
Yes.
And I liked all that. I thought it wasn't handled as deftly as it was in the original films, but I mean, at some point you have to shed that to try and enjoy it, and I did try and shed that, and I did, and found myself enjoying that element of it.
Yeah. Okay.
What started to piss me off was just the way they interacted. It felt like, I think we said this before, or I've said this before, but someone sort of a vague approximation of what an adolescent would talk like.
Yeah.
I mean, they're probably all in their sort of 20s. I don't know. I don't really know how old they're all supposed to be, but it just felt that it wasn't sort of age appropriate. Dialogue.
Yeah. It would have been fine to just have them as adults, really.
Or maybe young adults. I mean, I mean, maybe they were, but like it just felt that I couldn't quite pin their ages on the basis of how they spoke. There seemed to be a bit of dissonance between the way they spoke and how old they maybe looked. I don't know. But that for me was a slight problem. And I think the script reoccurrently was a problem for me throughout, not just in the presentation of adolescence, because that sort of goes pretty quickly when the xenomorph turns up. But like, I sort of found the script to be, we talk about this idea of pacing. in terms of the set pieces. The only time it stopped, which is in classic modern cinema fashion, is for like a 10-minute exposition dump.
Oh my god!
Which I was like,
that was insufferably shit. That scene.
So shit,
Yeah.
and it was, you know, and again, you know, we shouldn't keep talking about the original because it's not fair. But like, you know, the reason why the original works is because there's no explanation. That's the whole point. And I know that the point of these of a sequel is to, I guess, is to explain everything, but you don't have to go, we're crushing the aliens into a paste and taking the magical black stuff out that the Prometheus old-headed guy used. You know? And it's just like, we don't need this.
What reason did you have to keep this from the main characters until right now?
Yeah.
The only reason is just to keep the plot, you know, keep you guessing. But then, like, I thought the whole serum subplot was a stupid idea. Anyway.
I think it'd have been bolder to just have no point.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would make sense that the human race would experiment on these things.
Yeah, completely.
But like, I don't like. Yeah, I just thought leave it at that. You don't need to know.
Yeah, or have a scene right at the beginning which sets it up,
which they kind of did.
Yeah, they did,
and that was enough for me.
Yeah.
I was like, that's all the exposition I need. I remember thinking that.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, oh, there's an Nostromo. Oh God.
Yeah,
and then you know, and then it was like they get obviously the alien cocooned itself in space or whatever.
Oh yeah, it survived, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, but Ripley, sorry. You know, I thought that's enough.
Yeah,
I'll take that. Leave that. Move on.
Yeah,
you know?
Agreed. Yeah, you didn't need to have this moment.
It's just, again, we're talking. You know, we're sort of maybe lamenting more the sort of structural problems in Hollywood more broadly, but you know, they can't. You know, exposition can't exist in the way the world is designed. It can't exist in. You know, it can't be sprinkled liberally throughout the plot. It has to exist in like a 10 to 15 minute moment where the characters stand face agape as one character, usually an outsider, or a character that in this case is the sort of the link between old and new.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
You know, going, this is why, this is why, this is why, and they go, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, and that's it. And that's everything we need then.
Yep.
I think is kind of insulting to the intelligence of a viewer, and I think it deprives the viewer of the opportunity to maybe speculate and maybe put more of themselves into the narratives that they're engaging with. I don't know. I mean, again, Alvarez, mate, I'm not just laying into you here. It's my problem with Hollywood more broadly.
Yeah. But no, you're right. I mean, another example of it is when there's going to be an impact event, and that's a cool idea, right? The idea that the ship is destabilizing and it's going to crash into the rings. But instead of just having the computer, you know, again, a nice sort of audio cue, hark back to the original impact event in T-minus. That's all you need. Yeah. You don't need someone to go, oh my God, we're about to crash into these rings.
Yeah, like they even need to acknowledge it. What I love so much about the original Alien, I keep saying we should, is that she barely even acknowledges it. It's the audience is acknowledging it. She's locked in this battle with this sort of you know, biologically advanced being that she will lose against. And a one-on-one.
Yeah.
And she's not thinking about the fucking fact that she's detonated the ship and is going to blow it into a million pieces.
Yeah.
You know, that's the least of her fucking concerns.
Yeah.
You know, leave those for the audience. The audience can have that. The characters don't need to acknowledge it. You only need to address it once. The characters will know from that point onwards. They don't need, you know, this idea that the characters, you know, they basically just reach their hand through the screen and grab ours and pull us through the narrative. And it's like, this isn't a complicated narrative. You don't need to like.
It's very simple, yeah.
If the legacy of this film is as powerful as you want it to be, and the fucking reason it exists is because it is, why are you guiding me through it?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't need that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yes.
Should we talk about the inclusion of a key character from the original? Again?
Ian Holm.
Yeah.
Deceased for 2 years.
Yep.
Or is he?
Oh, well, we clearly, because this looked bad.
Yeah.
It's
Ian Holm, if made out of wax.
Yeah.
A Madame Tussauds figure of him left in the sun for too long.
Oh, and it was just... You saw his face, the kind of outline of his face, and you're like, "Oh shit, that's Ash. Cool. All right, maybe leave it there.
In the shadow.
Yeah. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Who cared? Like, move on, because it could have been any. It didn't need to be him.
No.
I know it isn't him, but it's the same model.
It's him.
It's called Rook, I think, isn't he?
Ash.
Yeah, but but this one is.
Oh
called
yeah,
Rook.
sorry. Yeah.
But it's basically Ash, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's exactly the same mannerisms, apart from the fact that he looks a bit uncanny valley off.
Yeah.
Again, a real shame because the rest of the visual effects and the special effects were largely very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, left a bad taste, unnecessary hark back to the original, as we've already discussed. You don't need it. You
Ethically
really don't.
shocking as well, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's fitting that... Sorry. It's bizarre that there's a significant portion of the film that explores the nature of AI,
Yeah,
which was equally undercooked.
Yeah.
But, like, it's ironic that the same, albeit fledgling AI, was used by the fucking, this industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like this sort of cannibalistic attitude towards its own history.
Yeah.
And using AI to facilitate that. And it makes, because the whole point of this sort of the AI subplot in the film is that, AI is cold and calculated only because the humans want it to be.
Yeah.
So AI is dangerous only if the humans make it dangerous.
Yeah.
All of this sort of optimism about AI is the same the way that there was so much optimism for the internet until like the powers that be got control of it and turned it into something that was a far cry from what people wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And it's ironic that you've got these big studio bigwigs that are going, how are we going to connect 1979 Alien to 2024 Alien? Fucking Ian Holm.
Yeah, Ian Holm, AI, like deepfakey stuff.
I mean, like, it just, to me, that's like a fitting sort of like a meta thing going on there. A meta thing about the sort of cautionary nature of AI, which is played out in the film poorly.
Oh, yeah.
But the fact is that these fucking studio bigwigs have sanctioned using AI just to go, remember that? Remember Ian Holm? I mean, no disrespect to Ian Holm, God rest him, but he's not the character I think of when I think of Alien.
No, yeah.
I don't think, Ian Holm.
Yeah.
When I stick it in, I'm like, Ian Holm.
Here he is, Ash. Yeah.
When I watch it now, I only watch Ian Holm. I just turn it off.
Yeah, no, you actually got a Blu-ray, which is...
It's just called Ian Holm edition. Yeah. I made it myself.
Yeah. It's all slowed down, so it's still feature length.
Bits from Lord of the Rings in it as well. Like, I just think, to me, I just think it's absolutely shocking, and I think they should stop doing it. And I know the director and Ridley Scott have all defended it, and the AI people came out and said we only did it with respect in mind, but no, you didn't. I mean, maybe you thought you were, and I don't think you're all doing it because you're sort of horrible people, but it's hard to sort of ignore the corporate influence there, I think, more than anything else.
I think, what they could have done to placate this a bit would be to not use deepfake. Just don't use any CG in it. You've done such a great work with the puppetry. Commit to it early on. Make. Do you remember in the original Alien, the wax, the kind of shit wax thing they kick at the end and it cuts back and it's clearly not Ian Holm anymore, but like it's charming because it's of a different era and they could have just constructed it a bit like that because he's an android, it's meant to be a bit off, and more so he's a different model, so just do, if you're gonna use him, use because you clearly have the technology to be able to 3D print this kind of stuff anyway. Use a puppet or something.
Or use someone that's still alive.
Yeah, definitely. Just use another...
It's not, Ian Holm isn't the only guy.
No, I mean
you've got, I don't know who's alive. I mean, Sigourney Weaver's alive.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you're going to be as crass with the way you fucking resurrect a CGI ghost of Ian Holm, like, why not just use someone that's alive?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
who played Bishop? Is it Mr. Bean? Michael Bean, or is it?
No, Michael
Lance
Bean
Henriksen.
is the Marine. Yeah, Lance Henriksen.
Okay. I think he's still alive. I'm fairly sure he is. Yeah.
Can you message in, Lance?
Yeah.
If you don't message in, we assume you've passed away.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, God rest you. Yeah, no, I don't know. Like, I just fucking I thought that was shocking.
And the character's in it a lot as well. It's not just like a cameo. It's like Ash is. I'm calling him Ash. Ash is in it for an uncomfortably long amount of time.
He's like the antagonist.
Yeah.
Basically, isn't he? Like, because in the original film, he represents the sort of clandestine, nature of the sort of shaky.
Yeah, the moral backbone of the company or lack thereof.
Yeah, exactly.
Of it,
it's all in him. But it's so well done. Now it's just like him going, the company needs this, the company thanks you.
Yeah.
I mean, that was crap anyway, but the fact it was him was I just left a bad taste in the mouth.
Yeah, completely.
And I ate a whole bag of peanut M&Ms. I love peanut M&Ms.
Yeah, somehow, mate.
Somehow it tasted like shit.
No, yeah, it's full of moments like that. Like we've already mentioned this sort of the dialogue thing is that there's a bit where he says, "Get away from her, you bitch," and you're just like, "No, don't." And
if he stutters it a little bit,
yeah,
that's the way we get around it. It's like, no, mate, I'm sorry, that's not going to work.
No,
You know, I quite liked him. I thought, you know, as a performance, it was quite good.
yeah,
But he had a bit of tough shoes to fill, given that in the more recent memory of the Alien franchise, like Michael Fassbender's android was one of the best things about both films.
okay, yeah.
You know, so and I think that he did a pretty commendable job. I quite liked the way that he was like went from being this sort of like Frankenstein's monster style thing that the Kaylee Spenner's character's dad built for her to sort of keep, then to becoming this sort of corporate stooge with the injected with the memory stick. I don't know.
It switches to an English accent.
Yeah, I kind of I didn't mind it.
Yeah,
on the surface level, on a performance level, I didn't mind it, but I just found the whole AI stuff a bit sort of undercooked. And again, like, you know, would have been better served in the background, like it is in the original. You know?
Yeah. No, I think he was,
keep mentioning the original.
I know we can't help it, can we?
No, but if a film is so indebted to it, which it is, it's Alien light.
Yeah.
Like, if you're so indebted to it, you're going to leave yourself open to comparisons, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
So fuck it.
Alien Romulite. It's another one.
I like that.
Yeah.
One of the better ones.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's funny. I keep mentioning it at work, this film, to various people and like explaining my kind of distaste for it. But then I always am saying afterwards, "Oh, it's worth a watch anyway." So I'm weirdly advertising it still. I'm like, it's quite a specimen. So watch it, but just temper your expectations. That's what I've been saying to people.
And the consensus seems pretty split, because I avoided reviews entirely, as I try to do generally anyway now for modern film releases. But
yeah,
you know, then I went onto Letterboxd, and it's really, you know, spread. There are some people that think it's brilliant.
Oh yeah, man.
And you know, and that goes to show, you know, maybe there is something in it that we're just missing by obsessing over the fact that it's not the original. But I still think that as a movie, as a legacy film, you know, I feel like we go back to what we were talking about before, as legacy films, their sort of purpose, and for what reason do they exist? They exist, you know, to use the legacy as foundational to move forward with something else.
Yeah.
And this film does not exist in that way.
No way. No.
I mean, it's expansive in the mythological sense, that there's a bit more sort of overt, you know, the sort of overt dystopian subplot, which sort of ties in with the AI, you know, and all that sort of stuff. But the reality is, it's a very similar film to Alien, just with a different setting and fresher faces.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't know, like, I'm not sure what purpose this serves, other than just sort of reminding people of Alien and making them go, oh, maybe I'll watch the original.
Yeah.
Which you probably should have done anyway.
I think so. Yeah.
But at the same time, as you say, it's not to contradict everything I've just said. I didn't hate it.
No, I didn't.
So, I don't know.
There was a lot to love about it, but it was, for me, it started off as an 8, went to a 6, and then kind of stayed there, maybe dipping down to a 5. I mean, I know you don't like ratings and stuff, and that's totally fine, but if I were to, that's kind of how I would do it. There's someone on Facebook who I won't name, but they tend to express their opinion for film quite a lot.
Oh, cool.
And if they like a film, chances are I'm not going to like it.
Oh, really?
It's like,
is this someone that you know listens?
I don't think they do.
Okay.
So I'm
in trouble if they do.
If they do, just in case, I'm going to keep it vague. I'm not going to use any identifier.
Colin Wilberforce.
Yeah. Sorry, Colin. No, but it's just funny because, like, whenever they say that it's fantastic and like, oh my god, you must watch it, they're quite sort of gleeful.
Do I know this person?
No. They're quite gleeful in their explanation of films that they enjoyed.
Yeah.
But
that sounded really like I was taking the piss, but I actually genuinely like it when people like are passionate about stuff that I really didn't like.
Yeah.
It makes me sort of. There's also that part of it that thinks, well, I still didn't like it.
Yeah.
But you know, once I sort of like park my sort of withering ego away, like I do sort of think, God, it is good. It is good that someone liked it, and
Yeah.
you almost want to speak to them and find out why.
Yeah, I think they
Maybe
can.
message him, get him on,
Yeah, they can probably.
but make sure he doesn't listen to this part of the episode.
No, yeah. I'll have to do a cut down version.
yeah, slagging off Colin.
Send it to them. Yeah, I think, you know, but I do use them as a barometer for you know,
Shit films.
yeah,
They're your canary down the mine of
pretty
shit
much.
films.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Oh,
Fair enough. Yeah.
yeah.
Did he like it then?
Yeah.
What if he didn't after all that? He was like, "No shit."
No, they loved it. Yeah, and they spent quite a good great deal of time explaining how much they loved it. So it's clearly dividing people. So you know, it's
I think
important to
the
acknowledge
nature
that.
of these films do, because you know, you've got, you know, people that love the original so much that they just see anything that comes out of it nowadays as an affront.
Yeah,
You know, and you've got people who are perhaps a bit more accepting of it.
yeah.
I don't know. I think both points are valid to a degree, but I just think, you know, I said this before, and I think I say it quite a lot. I don't judge the people that enjoy or watch these films. I sort of more think about it in terms of the industry and how the industry is operating, and how these. I mean, again, I don't have my ear to the ground or anyone on the inside on this. This is all just speculation that borders on conspiratorial bullshit. But like, I just feel like there is like a sort of nefarious force at play.
Yeah.
That is just sort of like
Squeezing franchises for all their worth.
yeah, and then just fucking dumping them in the bin once they're sort of all empty.
Yeah. And then
Like a
20 years
carton
later.
of Ribena.
Yeah, 20 years later, they're kind of
Capri Sun.
picking through the rubble.
Yeah.
And they find it again. They're like,
Find the bottle of
"Ooh,
Capri Sun, yeah.
I'm going to squeeze this Capri Sun again.
What a metaphor. Yeah, good stuff. Right.
Nice.
Outro.
Outro.
Questing the cinematic void.
There we have it then. Yeah.
Oh, good to be back.
It is. It's very nice. I really, really liked talking about that. And I think it's definitely one of the more interesting films I've watched in recent memory, just in the sense that it sparks quite a debate in my own mind about the kind of the nature of these sequels and stuff like that. So
Yeah, 100%. I often wonder, because this, you know, this period of Hollywood is unlike any other kind before it. You know, I often wonder how it's going to be viewed in like 20, 30 years time.
Yeah.
And if maybe we'll be like, you know, maybe not necessarily us, but more broadly, like sort of pouring more reverence on it, or we'll treat it with increased levels of disdain. I don't know.
Yeah.
It always makes me wonder, because it's such a bizarre, obviously the sort of mainstream has always existed, and obviously film started out as a mainstream form of entertainment,
Yeah.
particularly obviously in Hollywood. But, you know, it's the power that it exudes and the size of it and the scope of it and the sort of ubiquity of it, I think, is larger than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And that's coming from someone that obviously wasn't around in the sort of new age of Hollywood in the late 60s, early 70s, or the 40s and 50s and whatever. But I just feel that that's the case. I don't know why.
No, yeah.
But I just
think you're right.
no, I do. Sorry, I just feel that's the case because of the fact that these films are just so dominant, and obviously the internet allows that dominance to continue.
Yeah.
And spreads it, because I think a lot of marketing material is done just by people who speculate online without even realizing it.
Oh God, yeah. They're spreading the word,
Yeah.
for better or worse.
Yeah.
It's a great tactic, and it's also an insufferable one, I think.
Yeah, could be in equal measure.
Yeah.
So next week, sort of said this right at the beginning, just after the outro, but we're hoping that Twisters will go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss disaster films. We haven't really touched on them that much.
No,
actually.
I was thinking that, like, you know, we've probably covered a lot of well-trodden ground here today. Today being
the 22nd?
22nd, just for the
Yeah.
people that listen to the episode.
Yeah.
Call back.
Yep.
A really shit one as well.
Much like Alien Rump Knife.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. New ground.
Yep.
I might even watch the original because it's been a long time and I really like it a lot.
Me and Hannah watched it recently.
Oh, lovely. And Hannah will be here.
Hannah will be, she'll be in attendance.
So it'll be a Cineboy Cinnamon first, where we have one of our significant others on.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. It's only taken 57 episodes. 58, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
No, she loves Twister, and she talks about Twister a lot, and has like she kind of remembers even the insignificant lines. It's quite sweet, actually.
Yeah.
So, and then we went to see the sequel a couple of weeks back. So we'll discuss both of those. And I think me and Hannah both quite like disaster films. We've watched quite a lot of them together, even the NAF ones. I kind of enjoy them for what they are. So yeah,
it's a genre that probably has more naff than good, isn't it?
Oh, big time, yeah. I mean, there's like one story throughout all of it. It's always just a battle for survival, families, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm actually not as well versed in this area of cinema, so I'm going to be looking forward to having you two drive me through the.
Hopefully, we won't be a nightmare to be around for an hour and a half.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Right. In the meantime, thanks for listening as always.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll catch you in the next one.
See you then.
Lots of love. See you later.
Bye.